Well, good morning. It's Rian Kutsia from Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions. Once again, today we are speaking to Walter Meyer from Wild Medics. Today we'll be talking specifically about a medical kit for my home. Walter, good morning and welcome.
Morning, Rian. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, thank you for your time as always and sharing your expertise with us. I'm going to jump straight into the first question. It's a bulky one. What essential items should a well-stocked med kit for my house include? And I'm talking both minor kind of injuries like, cuts and burns and stuff, and also common medical emergencies, sprains and maybe insect bites, allergic reactions, that sort of stuff.
Rian, as always, it always starts with the bleeding control items.
Mhm.
I think for a home kit, what I've seen a lot of people do also is they split up two home kits. So they have a more serious trauma kit and then a more general, first aid kit. With the idea being you can teach the kids that kit in the bag or whatever that's hanging there that looks so fancy, that's for the serious emergencies, so little Johnny doesn't fall off his bicycle and scrape his knee and put a 400 rand blast bandage on his knee, and then
Yes.
he gets more injured when dad comes home tonight. So, to teach the kids what's for what, so that is useful to split the things up. I think then for a home kit, consider how many people in your house, and also, who visits, or who visits frequently and who might visit, in other words, you may have to cater for more people than you think of. Maybe you've got some guys doing building work or something at your house or whatever, and one of them gets injured, and if they are ill prepared, it now falls on you to look after them. And then I would also consider how far am I away from help, because is it my house in the city that's 10 minutes from an ambulance base, or is it my house on a farm somewhere, or my house in a small town? How far am I away from help? Often our wilderness courses, I start by saying to people, what is wilderness? And then I know for most of you up there in the north, you think wilderness is a place outside of Knysna where you go on holiday, right? But it is in medical terms, they define it as anywhere where you're more than an hour away from advanced medical assistance, and medical intervention.
Okay.
So if you think
I was unaware that there's a definition for wilderness.
Yeah, and for wilderness medicine specifically, they define it like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're out in a wild environment. You may be in a town, or you may even be on the outskirts of a city or something. Or remember, 10 minutes from the ambulance base and 10 minutes from the hospital, but in a disaster, suddenly you're in the wilderness. That ambulance can't reach you. You cannot reach the hospital, or for whatever reason, maybe there are some guys standing in the road saying you're not allowed to go outside your house. You have to live under your bed in fear. And now you have to, you're not allowed to go see your doctor or go to the hospital. So you need to be prepared for these things, and that changes the game significantly, So of course, being a home kit as well, you can expand it quite a bit on something that you carry with you. You don't have to carry the stuff with you. It lives in your house, right? So you can have more items and a wider range of items. Also consider the medications that people in your house use. So if you've got family members there, or residents in the house who are on chronic medications, what do you do you keep spares for them? Do you have spare stock? Do you buy the medication in time so that you have it available, and so on? It's always a good idea if you can keep spares of a chronic medication, at least a spare month's supply. I know it's not always easy to get hold of, because you've got to convince somebody to give you a script for it or whatever. But I think especially in a rural setting, discussing that with a doctor and making sure that you have spare medication, or it's a good idea. I see something that's interesting overseas. It's not something I've really seen in South Africa yet, but definitely in the US and in Canada, you start getting these things that some companies publish or put out a medications first aid kit. So they, you know, you can get a range of antibiotics, for instance, and et cetera, that you can obtain from you get a script from the doctor. It's a telemedicine company where you consult with a doctor, you get a script, so it's all legal and so on. And then you have a case of one of the products is a thing called the JACE case that I've seen, JASE. So of course, what you can do in South Africa, if you're interested in something like that, you can build it up yourself by speaking to your GP and just get a prescription for the things that's in a JACE case, right? You don't have to buy a JACE case from the US. You can get the stuff here. It's just not, you know, made up in a nice little pretty kit like it is there, but you can do it yourself. So yeah, there are all kinds of considerations. And then also maybe consider if you've got, let's say you've got children there at home, and even if your kids are healthy, maybe they have friends who come and visit, and there may be something like a spare asthma inhaler, or you know, something to deal with anaphylaxis with, you know, maybe an EpiPen. Okay, that's quite expensive, but you understand what I'm saying. And so, you know, being prepared is an important thing, and consider a little bit outside of your immediate family. You know, who else might be there? What might you need? You know?
And then you just build it up.
Because
I mean, all of these things cost money.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So, and talking about all of these things, all, or at least most of them, have got expiry dates. Is there a way that you can easily and effectively track these expiration dates?
Yeah, you know, there isn't really a system for that at the moment. You're going to have to make your own spreadsheet or something, and, you know, sit there and fill in the data. Otherwise, if you've got a smaller first aid kit, you know, just check it on occasion. You know, what we do with company first aid kits and that sort of thing is when it gets packed, there's a list in the kit with the dates of the medications, and then the kit gets sealed. So the moment the person breaks the seal on the kit, then you know, okay, I have to recheck this thing. But that's a different, you know, it's a bit of a different management system to what you might use in a private house. But yeah, you are correct. You've got to check those expiry dates and see what, you know, what you have and how frequently you have to change it. Interesting, of course, with a house kit, because if you don't take it outside and it sits in a good spot in your house, so, you know, at the risk of sounding like a medications box, but if it's in a cool, dry place, you know, if it's not somewhere where it's going to get influenced, then the medications actually live a lot longer. So you can sometimes, if you store things correctly, you know, I'm not suggesting people do this. I need to say this as a disclaimer, but if there's something in there that's expired and you really critically need it right now, you could probably still use it. It might be slightly less effective, but it's, you know, if it's stored correctly and so on, it actually lives quite long. You know, so yeah, know what you have and know what you know, have a bit broader knowledge than just, oh, it's an expiry date, I have to throw it away, you know.
Well, seeing as how you mentioned that, let's talk about storage of such a kit in your home. What is, you know, what are the better type of places to keep it? Should it be kept in the dark like a mushroom?
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be per se in the dark, but obviously if you can avoid direct sunlight, generally it's better for any of these things, and if you can avoid temperature fluctuations. So I think it's good that if you might want a kit in a central location, or if you have a double-story house or something, you may want 2 kits, so upstairs and a downstairs kit, especially for your critical things like trauma care and so on. You don't have to have a medications kit upstairs and downstairs, but a trauma kit up and downstairs is a good thing. Or if you have an outbuilding or something, having a small trauma kit there as well might be useful. I think then consider everybody in the house, can the kids reach this kit if they need it? And do they know what to do with it? And also, especially with smaller children, do they understand the risks of the kit if there's medications in it specifically? You don't want a small child finding a bunch of medications. And medications you may want more hidden away or locked away or out of the way, something like that. Also, if you have older children, maybe you're not that concerned about those things anymore, but maybe there's people who visit with small children, so could just consider the safety of where I put it. It is nice if a kit is visible, or if there's some sort of a sign that says, here's a first aid kit in this cupboard. I know it looks weird in the house to have it, it's in a workplace, nobody thinks twice about it, but in a house, if there's a first aid sign on your TV cupboard, it looks odd, and so on. But, maybe that's it's useful, or if it's in a study or somewhere where it doesn't bother anybody. And ask yourself also, can I reach this thing if maybe I cannot stand upright? So, let's say your leg's injured, and now the kit's hanging at 7 foot, above a door frame or something like that, and I can't stand up because I have a broken leg, or I've been shot in the leg, or whatever happened, I can't get up there. That's it. Consider those things. It's the problem with all of that is there's never a perfect answer, right? It's a whole bunch of considerations, and you try and get the best solution.
Maybe you're visiting with a friend, and something happens to the friend, and now you need to scramble around to try and find something to help this person in his own house. It would certainly help if you know where things are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes people don't share enough with friends and family and so on. If you've got whatever, your brother comes and visits you regularly, why can't he know where your first aid kit is? Let him know where it is. It's useful. Yes.
These are things that I think, safe enough to say, probably most people never even think about.
Correct.
We stop at, if he knows where the coffee is, then it's all right.
Yeah.
Which is also important, but some things can be more important depending on where you find.
After the emergency, you're going to want a cup of coffee. Yeah, so
exactly. Yes. Well, if you look a little bit beyond the first aid part of it, should I include like diagnostic tools maybe in like thermometers and pulse oximeters and blood pressure monitors and stuff like that? And are there, should I do some sort of training on these kits, or at least some of them, in order to make me more effective?
Yes, definitely. Look, diagnostic equipment is useful, especially automated things. So if you think about a automated blood pressure cuff, even if you don't really know how to take a blood pressure, most people can figure that thing out. Or you obviously, ideally you want to practice with the thing and know the thing before it's an emergency. But what is useful about that type of equipment, obviously it helps making a bit of a diagnosis of what's going on with the patient. And even if you're not comfortable or capable of making the diagnosis, with the modern technology and the move towards things like telemedicine and consultations online and so forth, it's useful if you're speaking to a medic or to a doctor to be able to say, listen, this is the blood pressure, this is the SATs at this stage, this is the temperature, this is the heart rate, and so forth. So even if you don't really know how to use that data yourself, you can communicate it to somebody who does know what it means. So that is useful. With us, a lot of the courses we run, of course, include that type of training, not only how to do the diagnostics, but also to interpret it at a basic level. The reason is that we mainly prepare people for situations where there is no doctor. So or you have no comms. So the whole idea of telemedicine and so on is purely a nice thought. And you now have to understand what it is that I'm seeing. And also, if you're in a situation where you're looking after somebody for a prolonged period, so you're beyond an hour, you want to start monitoring this patient in a way and see what is happening. Does it look like they're improving? Is it not? Also, if you're performing any intervention, is my intervention having some success? So being able to take a blood sugar or being able to take a blood pressure, that sort of thing, it's useful information to have, and it's very useful to know what it means and to be able to interpret it.
You guys, I mean, you sell all these type of kits as well. Do you sell like a standardized kit? And if so, what are more or less the items that you tend to include as standard? Or do you cater for the customer, and the customer tells you, I want the following?
Yes.
Or like a combination?
Yeah, at the moment, our shop is more set up almost like Build-A-Bear. The Build-A-Bear shops where you can go build a teddy bear.
Yes.
So ours is a little bit like that, where you can come in and pick your bag, and then the stuff is actually packed into candy jars so that it looks like you feel like a kid in a candy store, and you can you can pick and choose your stuff there, and then get advice at the same time on it, which is quite important. I feel that if you sell the stuff you get, and if you're buying the stuff, you want to be buying from somebody who knows what they're talking about, and who had some experience and so on to back that up. So we've got a wide range of items, and you can build up the kit. We have some standardized medical kits now it's not quite available yet. It will be on the site soon. On our wildmedics.com website, there's a shop section now. It's brand new, so it's not fully stocked yet, but in the next week or two that will be stocked. So for people who watch this later, that would be sort of by the end of March 2025. It should be quite fully stocked up, and then you will also have that functionality where you can open a list and actually just sit there and go click, 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 click. I want all these things. It gets popped into a kit for you, and it gets shipped off. We sell mainly higher end first aid equipment. We don't sell the cheapest and nastiest stuff. There's lots of places that do that. So we try and sell more items for either serious medics or guys who are trained in first aid for work, takes things a lot more serious, or for the more seriously prepared civilian. We don't do those little 300 Rand, nonsense kits with, naughty plasters and stuff like that in it. But yeah, as I said, there are plenty of places where you can get that if you want it. So, yeah.
Well, look, don't shoot down a naughty plaster. I've seen it work wonders.
Yeah, you've got a headache, you stick it on the forehead, and it takes the headache away.
Walt, thank you so much. And once again, I think let's just conclude with this. It's always better to at least do a basic first aid course, so that you've got that knowledge in case you ever need it. Rather have it than never need it. And when you talk about first aid courses, is there a frequency to it that you should do it or redo it to keep up to date and keep yourself valid on everything?
So that's a very good question, again, because in South Africa, the norm with what people are familiar with, the old level 1, 2, and 3 first aid courses, those had an expiry date of 3 years on the certificate. So if you had to keep the certificate valid, then for legal purposes, whatever, for workplace purposes, then you had to redo the course every 3 years. If you look internationally, the norm is a little bit more like 2 years, so it's shorter. And some of the, for instance, some of the mining companies and so on that I work for, is they do a full course every 2 years, a refresher every 1 year. So it's full course refresher, full course refresher the whole time. And there's method in that. It's because they end up with guys who are really sharp, who really know what they're doing. who are really prepared to deal with an emergency. And you know, if you, this is mainly for exploration companies, right? So it's not developed mines, it's for guys who are looking for minerals and so on. So they work in very remote and very potentially dangerous places. And you know, so they take this stuff very seriously. And that for me is always the indication is look at the people who really understand the risk, you know, how often do they train? So
Yes.
generally, the more frequent, the better in a way. And then also, but there are ways of keeping yourself up to date as well. You know, there are some good, say, YouTube channels where you can watch a quick refresher on something or whatever. Just make sure that what you're choosing is actually, you know, the right advice, and that it's up to date, that it's not something that's 50 years old and has been disproven. And that happens in medicine all the time. You know, if you start having my hairstyle, and by then you've gone through, you know, 6 or 7 reinventions of different skills and different things, you know, and the guys teach you stuff now. You go on a refresher and they say, no, you've been doing it wrong for the last 50 years. You go, no, you taught us wrong 50 years ago, you know, but anyway, it changes. So it's interesting. So to stay up to date is important, and to get new information is important. And then,
well, even if you're just at your own house and you've got kids, and you're going to have a birthday party and they've got friends coming over, I think it's worthwhile knowing that you've done a first aid course or first aid courses in case something should happen. I think there's a lot of peace of mind in that. And maybe do something like contact the parents and ask, you know, is your kid allergic to anything, that sort of stuff, so that you know. And once again, I think that's stuff that most people really don't. They think about what sort of cake should I have.
Yeah. No, correct. I think also what I've found is that a lot of our return clients, they like to also mix and match the courses that they do. So you'll find a guy will come, say, for a advanced course. So he'll do a wilderness first responder or something, and then next year maybe he comes and he does just a CPR workshop, or he does a stop the bleed. And then the year after he comes and he does a tactical medical course, and then the 3rd or 4th year he comes back and he does wilderness first responder again or so on. So there are ways of keeping it interesting as well, so that you don't sit through the same classes year on year.
Yes.
And so that's the idea. What we're going to be launching soon is a thing where qualified first aiders can come and just do practical scenario sessions. So they'll come for a day and just run scenarios and debriefs. Because I've actually found that most people learn best from that. And also, look, scenario training is one of our big things that we've been doing, you know, since the start of a business. I've always pushed the scenario training, and there are lots of first aid courses that don't offer scenario training, or the scenario training is incredibly sort of mundane and limited. You know, it's like, oh, imagine this guy's bleeding, and imagine his arm is now cut, and put an imaginary bandage on there, and the guy stands there and he motions this thing in a classroom. And then there's a big difference between, okay, run there and go and look what's going on, and suddenly there's all hell is broken loose and there's blood squirting everywhere and that sort of thing, you know, in a simulation, obviously. But it makes a big difference to what people retain and what they feel capable of doing.
I think we should maybe do a next video very specifically about training and different courses and stuff, so that we can cover that in a lot more detail, because you know, we've spoken about all these kits. I think it's high time that we have a proper discussion about the training part as well. So let's do that in a next video. To our followers, if you've kept on watching up to now, I trust that we've at the very least just given you some food for thought. Please follow and press that like and subscribe button so we can grow the channel, help us get the message out there. Walt, to you again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. Highly appreciated, as always.
Thanks, Aaron. Good to be with you.